3 years have passed since the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, or AIIB, was officially established. By May of this year, the AIIB had funded more than 24 major infrastructure projects around the world and had granted loans of more than $4.5 billion. But just what is AIIB and what does it hope to achieve? Let's take a very quick look at the bank's history and also its ambitions.
With headquartered in Beijing and authorized capital of $100 billion, the AIIB is a multilateral development bank focused on infrastructure investment. Chinese President Xi Jinping first raised the idea of the bank in 2013. He saw the organization as a way to boost cooperation around development within Asia. Xi Jinping also wanted to address the region's massive infrastructure spending hole, which according to a study from 2010 was $8 trillion deep. The bank is designed to fund much-needed projects in the fields of energy, transportation, water management, telecoms, rural infrastructure and environment protection. The three major global rating agencies have all given the bank their top-level rating, while Basel Committee on Banking Supervision has awarded it a 0% risk rating. The AIIB is now working with the World Bank, the Asian Development Bank, the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, and others to establish a cooperation center for multilateral development bank financing. The center is intended to promote data sharing, project coordination, and capacity building for countries and regions taking part in China's Belt and Road Initiative.
Well, since its launch, the AIIB has focused on infrastructure investment with a mission to improve social and economic situations in Asia and beyond. And following are some of the milestones for the AIIB so far. It completed 28 projects in 13 countries as of June 2018. In June 2016, the bank approved its first 4 loans, totaling over $500 million to fund power, housing and transportation projects in Bangladesh, Indonesia, Pakistan and Tajikistan. And in March 2017, the AIIB Board of the Governors approved 13 applications to new members to join the bank. And this was the first time the bank welcomed the new members after its inception. And just over a week ago, the AIIB approved the memberships of 6 more countries: Algeria, Ghana, Libya, Morocco, Serbia and Togo. And that brought the total number of members to 93, a surge from 57 3 years ago. And the world's top 3 credit rating agencies, Moody's, Standard & Poor's and Fitch Ratings, all gave AIIB a long-term issuer default rating of AAA or AAA because of its existing and expected intrinsic strengths. And for more discussion, we're now joined by Mr. Liu Zhiqin, a senior fellow at the Chongyang Institute for Financial Studies at Renmin University of China. Welcome to Global Watch, Professor Liu. Well, we've just seen the rising numbers of the approved members of the AIIB, and that actually expands the bank's reach within, not only within Asia, but also to the world, to the whole world. But developed nations and less developed nations must have the different demands from that bank, from AIIB. How different are they? What are the different aspects they are looking at by joining AIIB?
You know, AIIB is very new in the world, and also is not a competitor to the other existing international financial institutions. It's a good partner to the whole world, especially for the developing countries. Developing countries for infrastructure demand and all other projects that needed funding raising. So AIIB, I think, came to the right time for the right position, for the right purpose. Of course, this institution is also used for the developed countries. Developed countries, they have different issues, different problems. Of course, from infrastructure basis, they are well developed. But you know, in the past 3 decades, all the developed countries, they didn't pay too much efforts and funding to improve their infrastructure project. That's why they need to renew, to upgrade their infrastructure project. That's why the AIIB is also in a position to meet all the demands from the developed nations. That's why we have so many members, 93, including many developed countries. They can coordinate their project need with the principle of AIIB to promote their economy.
And there has also been a very key question since the establishment of AIIB in 2016, at the end of 2015. The key question is the relations between AIIB and the other investment banks like ADB, like the World Bank, etc., etc. Are they competitors or are they potential partners? 3 years have passed. Do you think that question has been answered?
I think the 3 years already give good answer to the whole world. The global market is now has confidence in the AIIB. At the very beginning, there are many questions about the purpose and the principle of doing business. So that's why so many countries are believing that this is competitive to the other international institutions. But from the facts that AIIB is real a partner, we coordinate with all other international institutions to raise some money to approve projects, not only for the Asian countries, also for all the countries who are needed, who are qualified for such projects. So in this way, we can show that AIIB is a good, supplementary institution to all the other existing institutions, that we combine together as an international family, that we can provide more opportunities for all countries.
All right, we're getting back to you, Professor Liu, for more insight. Well, many Western observers predicted the China-led institution would be a major source for funding for the Belt and Road Initiative, but numbers tell a completely different story.
In its first 3 years of operation, the AIIB has approved loans totaling less than $7 billion. Its new approvals so far this year have reached $2.5 billion. The biggest beneficiary is India, receiving funding for 9 projects totaling nearly $2 billion. That accounts for almost 30% of the bank's total lending so far. Remember, India hasn't officially signed up for the Belt and Road Initiative yet. The country is followed by Indonesia, with 5 projects receiving almost $950 million. Turkey takes a third spot with around $800 million. Now let's compare this with the size of the Belt and Road funding. In 2016 alone, China's 2 leading banks reported BRI lending of around $101.8 billion. The fact remains that only some of AIIB loans are funding Belt and Road projects, but the bank and the initiative share a common goal: to support the creation of infrastructure. According to the Asian Development Bank, Asia alone needs infrastructure spending of around $26 trillion by 2030. Both the Belt and Road and the AIIB are answering that call. With Nayan said, Fang Tongxuan for CGTN.
All right, now back to Professor Liu. AIIB critics have been worrying that the AIIB was a way for China to expand its global influence. Do you think that's a reasonable worry?
No, I don't think this is a reasonable worry. But there's a misunderstanding of the purpose of AIIB at the very beginning. Because China at that time, we have our own project initiative that make international concern about the purpose of the AIIB. But actually, AIIB is a real bank institution that to promote projects in the Asian country, in developing countries especially. As we know, the other international financial institutions are more or less invested in some areas, but from the mechanism, they are not sufficient to meet the demands. So AIIB that launch is a good partner for all these institutions to provide more opportunities and chances to raising money, to raising funds to support all the projects around the world. Now, in fact, all this show that the AIIB has done a lot. So China's influence has nothing to do with the AIIB. Without the AIIB, China's influence still existing, still rising. AIIB is only a financial institution. I don't think there has a direct relations with the China's influence. We don't need to promote our influence by AIIB. It's a wrong misunderstanding.
Well, most of the Asian countries are actually less developed countries. They have a huge infrastructure needs. Why do you think the currently existed multilateral or multinational institutions have not been able to keep pace with the growing infrastructure needs? And do you think AIIB can make that mend?
I think AIIB is a good solution to such demand. Your question is very professional. You know, all the other international institutions, they have their own mechanism, how to evaluate their project, how to control the risk. They have the country risk management also. This is a long-way discussion, a long-way evaluation. Sometimes it will take several years to make a decision whether they can put the money or give loans to the countries. That this country cannot be waiting for a long time. But AIIB has changed this mechanism of management in a very professional, very scientific, and very serious risk management to have a quick decision to meet all these demands that the people need. Especially in Asian countries, you know that there really a lack of infrastructure project, the lack of talent, the lack of management. So AIIB can, how to put the gap together to make all these demands and to finish their mission in a short time with high efficiency.
All right, getting back to Professor Liu for more insight. AIIB's Vice President Joachim van Amsberg laid out the priorities for the bank earlier this year at the Shanghai Forum. The priorities cover three aspects. One is clean energy and sustainable cities. Another is promoting cross-regional and cross-border development, including in Central Asia and among members of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN. And the third priority area is on attracting private financing from long-term investors, such as pension funds and insurer companies. All right, back to Professor Liu. As we just heard, AIIB's Vice President says the bank will co-finance projects with private players, apart from those three aspects, of course. But public-private partnerships account for only 5 to 10% of the total investment. Do you think private investment can be a game changer in AIIB? And do you think AIIB needs to expand the portion of a private investment?
I think this is a direction of the reform of the bank. You know, the banking business is now no more the real banking business as a traditional one, because they changed a lot in the past 10 years. Many private investors, they are willing to join this project, to join the banking business. So if we give the chance and opportunity to invite all these qualified private funds and private investors to join together, that is a good way that to raise money or to raise funds, that also to leave and to reduce the burden of the government in all different levels. So according to the principle of AIIB, we think that this is a direction and a strategy for the bank to have more cooperations with the private investors. This is a real good way and a chance for all parties.
Any
concerned.
potential risks of promoting private investment?
But you have to say the risk existing everywhere and all the time, but it depends on whether we have good risk management and evaluation, especially the risk warning system. If we have all this general system, I don't think this is a big problem or challenge for the bank.
So mechanism change is needed in terms of the
Very
change
important.
of a portion of public and private investment. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Professor Liu Zhiqing from Renmin University of China.